It might be that India are playing a second string squad for the ODI series against South Africa, but it is still very much T20 World Cup season, and due to that there's obviously a lot of interest in what exactly is India doing in their preparation for the T20 World Cup, which is why when India were playing a warm-up or a practice game against a Western Australia 11, naturally people were curious to find out what exactly it is that was going on. And in the aftermath of that game, you've had Ravichandran Ashwin, who's of course part of that T20 World Cup squad, actually addressed the media in Australia, and he's actually said quite a few very interesting things. So I figured I'd join all of you guys and we could actually have a bit of a discussion about what exactly it was that Ashwin said in that particular press conference, because as I said, he made a few very interesting pertinent points regarding, of course, not just the T20 World Cup, but also why it is that India are playing a second string team in this series against South Africa, why it is that he doesn't really feel that concerned, that the bowlers are currently struggling a bit for form. So he said a lot of things. So let's just quickly go over that. And of course, one of the things that I found most interesting was when he was asked, why it is that India are playing a second string squad against South Africa, considering that, even the main players could probably use the game time. His answer to that was pretty simple. He said that aside from he started off by saying that, look, we're taking this particular edition of the T20 World Cup very, very seriously, and we're preparing in a different way. So this time around, we've never really been to Australia at this time of the year. So we wanted to acclimatize and get used to the pace and bounce on offer in the Australian tracks. Now, obviously, the first thing that the part which I've highlighted here, where he says this time of the year is very, very important, because this is generally speaking not a time when most nations are touring Australia for cricket. In fact, you'd remember that the peak of their summer season, which of course due to them being in a different hemisphere means that their seasons are a bit reversed. So the peak of their summer season starts in like November, December types. So October is generally speaking not a time when a lot of teams are touring Australia. So this time around, of course, because it's a World Cup happening, you have teams who are going to be playing there at this time of the year. But naturally, you want to get in tune with what weather conditions are there on offer, and so it does actually in some ways make sense that they go there beforehand, and they also played, as I mentioned, a practice game before their warm-up matches. So clearly, they're leaving no stone unturned when it comes to, of course, getting accustomed to and acclimatized to the weather conditions that would be on offer there. And of course, the fact is, their last series they were playing at home. This time around, they'll be playing on Australian pitches, and for a fact that there's chalk and cheese in terms of the kind of behavior you can expect from tracks in Australia. So it does in a way make sense that they've gone early and that they're focusing very hard on the warm-up and practice matches. Now, of course, this wasn't the only thing that he had to say about playing in Australia. One of the things that he did mention was that we are very confident about playing in Australia. Previously, obviously, there was always this bogey associated with going down under. But Ashwin did say very clearly that, that's something that this particular generation of players doesn't have much fear about, because, he did point out, and he said that, we've had a lot of success in Test cricket there in recent times, but also in the white ball leg of that tour, which is, of course, the last time when India toured Australia, when they, breached the fortress in Brisbane. That is the particular tour he's referring to. He's saying that during that tour, we had plenty of success in the white ball tour as well, and that is something that we can draw from. Now, of course, that is an interesting good point to be made, is that we often talk about India's success in the Test series, because again, Test series is the pinnacle of Test of cricket as a whole, and winning 2 back-to-back series in Australia is a massive achievement. But simple fact of the matter is, this team knows how exactly it is to play white ball cricket in Australia. They know what the conditions are like. They know that obviously the boundary dimensions are bigger, so how it is that you'd have to look to try and clear those ropes. All of these things do come into play, and as Ashwin said, the confidence of playing down under is very, very high. This team don't really have that much of a fear when it comes to playing in Australian conditions. And of course, it is worth noting that Australian conditions will differ based on the format. So generally speaking, if you think of hard bouncy tracks where pace bowlers will thrive, that does happen a lot in Test cricket. In ODI or T20I cricket, you will see pitches which, while they do offer some bounce, are generally very true and very conducive to stroke making. So in that sense, he did say, however, that the confidence that they have of playing in these wickets will serve them and serve them well. But of course, we're talking about boundary dimensions and how it is that bowlers will fare. Brings us back to another point which a lot of people have been making, is that this particular Indian team, the bowling does tend to look a little bit worrisome at this point. And this is true not just of the reserve, of the main players, but also the reserve players, where you'd notice that in the first ODI against South Africa, the bowlers did take a bit of a beating. So there's a lot of talk about what exactly it is that the bowlers are doing wrong. And Ashwin actually did come to the defense of the bowlers, and he made some valid points. He's saying that, look, it's fair to say that the bowlers are getting hit a lot in India, but he's saying that we also have to understand that boundaries in India are actually much closer to the 30-yard circle. He actually went on to elaborate on this point and said that here the grounds are much bigger, so you're not always going to look to clear the ropes. Of course, that's always an aim in T20 cricket, but you will also look to actually work the gaps, convert those ones into twos, and ensure that the scoreboard keeps sticking, rather than just look to clear a boundary, which is much easier to do in India because, as you said, the grounds there are much smaller. So it's a valid defense in some ways, but it doesn't also quite explain why it is that someone like Harshal Patel is still going for runs while in Australia, a place that where, considering that his strengths are bowling slow balls, that you'd expect he would actually have some success, given that a slower ball, if you mistime it, is very easy to pick out the fielder on the boundary circle. However, that hasn't been the case. You would, of course, be aware of the fact that in the warm-up game against the Western Australian 11, Harshal did go for 49 runs. That's not a good look, no matter which way you try and spin it. So, whilst I do take Ashwin's point here, I will also say that the bowling doesn't really inspire that much confidence right now, and that without Jasprit Bumrah there, who we know won't be part of the World Cup, it does look a little less confidence inspiring. Nevertheless, of course, that is something that I'm sure the team will try and figure out, ahead of and just before the World Cup starts. But another thing, of course, that Ashwin was quizzed about was the pressure match between, India and Pakistan. And truth be told, India-Pakistan is a match that, of course, Indian and Pakistani fans look forward to, because there's no bilateral cricket that these teams play. So, due to that, obviously, it adds a lot more gravitas and expectations and buzz around these clashes in World Cups or multi-nation tournaments. And, recently you had comments from the PCB chief, Ramiz Raja, where he said that, Pakistan have beaten the billion-dollar team in reference to India, and that we don't really fear them anymore. And Ashwin was quizzed about that, and he gave a pretty standard non-response, I would say, in some ways, where he said that look, it's just a game of cricket. The rivalry between the two nations and the two teams is obviously big, and it means a lot to the people, but we respect Pakistan, and we note for a fact that the Pakistan team also respects us. Now again, the respect point very well taken, because you have seen, when Virat Kohli was going through a poor run of form, you've had the likes of Babar speak out for him. Babar Azam spoke out in his favor. You've had the likes of Fakhar Zaman, Mohammad Rizwan, all also speak out in his favor, saying that he will find his form back. We hope he finds his form back. And you've also had a lot of Indian players. You've had someone like Dinesh Karthik, even the likes of Kohli themselves have spoken greatly or in very friendly terms when it comes to the Pakistan players. So in some ways, he is right that it's a lot more friendly between the two sets of players, and that they will treat it like a game. But despite how friendly it may be between the players, it is pretty certain that this is a game that absolutely no team would want to be on the losing side of, especially not India, because remember, last year in 2021, also opening game against Pakistan, they ended up losing that match comprehensively. It derailed their entire campaign. A loss this time around, and these words will actually start seeming hollower and hollower by the day, because again, if one loss can derail your campaign, then it means that match means a lot more, and this match, we know for a fact, does mean a lot more, not just to the fans but also to the players themselves. So plenty of interesting points made by Ashwin there, and obviously this is just the crux of a lot of the things he said. He's spoken a lot more. You can check those quotes out, and of course let us also know, how does you feel about any point that Ashwin made? Do you think he's speaking sensibly? We know for a fact he's a smart chap and makes a lot of good points, or do you think there are disagreements that you have with what it is that he said? You can let us know all of that in the comments below, and don't forget to like the video, share it with your friends, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and of course tap the bell icon so you know when we're going live or uploading a new video for you guys. Then you can go ahead and follow us on Twitter, Facebook and Instagram as well, and don't forget to download the SportsTech app. Thank you all once again for joining us. As always, I've been Shane Reyes, and I hope to see you all again once we keep coming to you guys with more and more videos. But for now, goodbye.